Evening and welcome to our News 2 special report celebrating the opening of the International African American Museum, where history comes alive. We followed this project from inception to construction, and now it's opening. But before we take you inside the new museum, we journey back to its origin. In 2016, an interview with Charleston Mayor Joe Riley, he told me that he placed a note in the breast pocket of his suit every day, and written on the note were the words, "Build the museum." He said of all the buildings, bridges, and ballparks built during his 40-year career as mayor, constructing a museum that would tell the story of the transatlantic slave trade was the most important to him. For 23 years, that vision has been coming into focus. After centuries of being buried, history is alive.
Yes, my Lord, you're the best in any kingdom.
Millions of enslaved men, women, and children captured in Africa, chained and shackled during the journey across the Atlantic Ocean.
Between 40 and 48% of all enslaved Africans that came to what is now the United States would have come through this very spot.
This very spot is Gadsden's Wharf. The executive director of the International African American Museum says stories that originated in Africa are finally being told.
This is a place that tells story of trauma, but this is also a place that tells stories of joy.
Dr. Tanya Matthews says the idea of the International African American Museum took root when Charleston's longest-serving mayor read the book Slaves in the Family by Edward Ball.
It was 1998. I read the book Slaves in the Family, written by Edward Ball, and through the book then I learned for the first time the harshness and the challenge and the brutality. More enslaved human beings were brought here to the site than any other place in North America. We have to build a museum.
Joseph Riley read a book that changed his life, and out of that transformation, he decided that Charleston needed to be telling the story of African American history, and was discovering that we could tell it like no one else could.
2 years ago, Charleston Mayor Joe Riley gave us a tour of the museum as it was being built.
And it's lifted up in reverence of what happened here.
As we walk between the 18 columns that raise the building off the ground where enslaved Africans died, Mayor Riley explained that every detail, from bricks to indigenous grasses, were selected to showcase the lessons brought from West Africa that shape who we are and how we live.
Building the physical beauty of it, the material, the design.
Dr. Matthews explains the central idea behind the museum that now stretches across 45,000 square feet is that this will be an evolving institution centered on truth.
Let's talk about this space. Why was it so important that this museum happened here on this particular site?
The museum has the humbling privilege and responsibility of reclaiming a portion of Gadsden's Wharf. So Gadsden's Wharf is one of our nation's most prolific former transatlantic slave trading sites.
Local, state, and national leaders broke ground on the International African American Museum in 2019. And now 4 years later, as history is being revealed, there are many people to thank for being caretakers of the dream.
I think there are a lot of thanks involved. There are thanks from the very, very beginning, of course, to Mayor Riley and those who entertained his ridiculous idea of building the second largest African American history museum in the country in Charleston. Congressman Jim Clyburn, who stood there in the beginning, board members, advisors, and then of course we have donors and contributors, right? Unfunded hope is a dream. And so we've had a lot of folks who have invested in the project, and those who invested before they knew it was certain, and those who invested once they saw it was certain and important and simply needed to be bigger and more powerful.